Just when we thought that the Olympics couldn't get any more controversial, one of the most controversial and yet the most confusing stories of the year has taken over the conversation. But the confusion is justified this time because this is a wild story that took so many unexpected turns that no one saw coming. Alright, so this all started off following a female boxing match when the Algerian boxer named Imane Khelif dominated an Italian boxer so badly that the Italian boxer was forced to quit in just 46 seconds into the match, yelling, "This is unfair." And almost immediately after the fight ended, clips started going around on social media claiming that the Olympics was now allowing trans fighters to fight this year and that the Algerian fighter was a biological man posing as a trans woman. Within a day, this claim traveled all across social media, becoming one of, if not the most talked about topic on X, especially after Elon Musk, JD Vance, and JK Rowling tweeted about it. And as you can imagine, several conservative commentators found it flat out disgraceful. And even I was inspired by the situation to make a tweet about biological men fighting women in sports. So at this time, everyone seemed to think that this was a politically driven situation, serving as a clear example of how wokeness and the political progressives are ruining women's sports and putting female athletes in danger. People were demanding a public apology for the Italian fighter, but then there was a plot twist. It was later revealed that maybe the Algerian fighter was the one that was owed an apology, as these photos started coming to surface. It was these pictures that threw previous accusations of the fighter being a biological male into question, seemingly proving those claims to be false. And in addition, the fighter's passport and birth certificate says female as shown by her dad, and in an interview, her dad said, "My daughter is a girl. She was raised as a girl. She is a strong and courageous girl." But others still weren't buying it. Many started to ask rhetorical questions like, if she were really a woman in Algeria, a predominantly Muslim country, why then is she not wearing a hijab in recent pictures, even when her trainer is wearing a hijab? And also, why are men touching her in these pictures, given that that isn't allowed in Muslim countries? But others responded by saying that these claims were made in ignorance since Algeria doesn't hold to the same restrictions as other Muslim countries, such as Iran and Afghanistan. But just when I thought that this situation couldn't get any more strange, I uncovered a huge curveball that threw me for a giant loop once again, making it even harder to get to the truth. Oh, it was in the midst of all of the confusion going on when it seemed that the sex of the fighter was finally confirmed when the vice president of the World Boxing Organization told a Hungarian newspaper that it's been known since 2022 that the Algerian boxer was indeed a biological male. He further confirmed this by informing that the fighter was previously disqualified from the IBA due to this, and that the fighter initially appealed, but then withdrew from the appeal process. And it seems like this withdrawal was likely because appealing would make their health records public. And in addition, on page 9 of the IBA's rule handbook, they clearly state that a woman is a person with XX chromosomes, and anyone with XY chromosomes is not eligible to compete. Still, many took this to say that the Algerian fighter's testosterone levels gave them too much of an advantage. But in response to this, the International Olympic Committee responded by saying that there's never been any evidence that the fighter even has XY chromosomes and didn't have elevated levels of testosterone. And in response to this, the WBO vice president also said, the problem is not with the levels of Khelif's testosterone because that can be adjusted nowadays, but with the result of the gender test, which clearly revealed that the Algerian boxer is biologically male. However, he also said that the results are confidential. And in addition to this, he also said that he reported this to the Olympic Committee, but they never responded. And once again, in response to this, the Olympics said that there's no evidence to suggest that the fighter was a man, and they had no reason to keep the Algerian and the other female fighters suspected of being a biological male from fighting. Part of the confusion surrounding this story comes from the fact that these sorts of conversations can easily be driven more by political ideology than facts, and we all have a natural proclivity to want our view to be confirmed, and we look for anything to justify our bias. This is what led to articles from those like Vox reporting on this situation by claiming that discrimination against trans Olympians has roots in Nazi Germany. Yeah. But before we get to the rest of the twists and the turns that were uncovered, I want to make it clear that it's not just us. Reporters have huge incentives for biased reporting, which is why I'm happy to have Ground News sponsoring this video. Not only does Ground News help you to understand where your news is coming from, but they also highlight bias of both sides, as I quickly came to see in this story about the boxers. With every story, Ground News has straightforward yet impactful features like the coverage bar, which shows you exactly how many sources are reporting on a story as well as their political leanings. Essentially, this helps you to quickly gauge the diversity of viewpoints and the potential biases in reporting. So for example, as I was researching, as you can see right here, there were 136 outlets covering this boxer story, but only 34% of the left-leaning outlets have covered it, and the majority were on the right and center. And here you can also see which outlets are covering it. Also, if you go over here to the bias comparison button, you can see how the left and the center and the right are covering the same story. Another great feature offered by Ground News is the blind spot feed. This feature covers stories that are overlooked by one side of the political spectrum. So, for example, here you can see that this story has 10 sources so far and no left-leaning outlets covering it. Sounds like a blind spot to me. So Ground News has become a valuable tool for me, especially as a Christian seeking truth and integrity in media. And if you want to try Ground News today, then you can go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen or go to the link down below in the description to get 40% off unlimited access to the Vantage plan. All right, now back to the video. But after reading countless articles on this story and trying to find as much information as I could, here's what appears to be the most likely situation. And before I say this, I just want to make it clear that this is my opinion based on everything that I could find, so keep that in mind. So it seems like the most likely reason for all of this confusion, as noted by others, is that the fighter has a condition known as difference of sexual development, or DSD, that affects 0.5 to 1% of the world's population. And to quickly explain how this works, in the earliest stages of development in the womb, all of us are born with the potential to be male or female. What makes us develop into a male rather than a female is the presence of a Y chromosome. If we don't have a Y chromosome, then we continue to grow in the womb as a female. And if we do have a Y chromosome, then that chromosome will send our body signals that follow a pathway that leads to the development of male hormones, sexual organs, and so on. But for someone who has DSD, these normal pathways that are usually turned on by the Y chromosomes aren't functioning properly and aren't sending the signals as they should. So this means that people with this condition don't have normal male hormone profiles. This is why someone who has this condition might have an XY chromosome while also having a vagina and go on in life normally as a woman. In most cases, this condition is spotted at birth, but sometimes the person doesn't know they have DSD until they get disqualified from a pre-competition medical test, or they discover it later in life, such as the South African runner Caster Semenya. But it's worth noting that DSD can give them a higher boost in testosterone during puberty, which can also give them an athletic advantage. This also has the potential to give them a boost in strength, muscle building, bone density, and stamina. But the issue is testosterone is natural, making the question of if they should be allowed to compete in sports more complicated, since natural advantages usually aren't sufficient for disqualification. For example, we wouldn't disqualify abnormally tall athletes from competing in the NBA or disallow Michael Phelps. As one Twitter user put it, Phelps has double-jointed elbows and knees, a hyperextended thorax, 50% less lactic acid production than the average competitor, and yet no one ever said he had a biological advantage. And with all of this being said, it's also important to note that we can't tell the level that the DSD has impacted someone without knowing their detailed medical history. So when it comes to this Algerian boxer, I've constantly seen people talk about the fighter's medical details, such as saying that they have 5 ARD, male genitalia that's been developed internally rather than externally, among other things. But the reality is they have no idea what the details are. None of us do. We don't know the details of the fighter's medical records and likely never will since it's not public. But all of that aside, the underlying concern that people have with a man beating a woman in female combat sports is legitimate, and it's one that I've been vocal about as well. We need to protect our women and keep our athletes safe. However, when so many people suggest that Khelif is a man that's willfully deceiving people by pretending to be a woman so that way they can beat up women, doesn't seem to be the case. Khelif doesn't identify as transgender. And if you were to ask me, when stuff like this happens, the ultimate fault doesn't lay at the hands of the boxers, but instead at the hands of the leadership of the IOC and the other organizations that determine who is and isn't eligible to compete. But although this event has become a dominating political topic over transsexuals and women's sports, oddly enough, the facts reveal that this story isn't actually about wokeness or transgenderism at all. All right, so nonetheless, I've learned some valuable lessons from all of this that I think is helpful for all of us. When the story first broke, most of us immediately assumed that it was a case of a trans fighter fighting a woman before we had all of the facts. And it's in times like these that I'm reminded of the verse in Proverbs that says that the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. And when you think about just how little research that most of us do before making such strong statements on issues like this, it's concerning. And personally, I find it terrifying just how quickly information can spread online even if it's false. We all should, myself included, be careful careful not to take rage bait at the expense of spreading falsehood, because more than anyone else, us that are Christians need to take seriously the command not to bear false witness. If this person has DSD or is really a biological female with masculine features, imagine how damaging it would be to have most of the internet accuse her of being a grown man that's a woke transgender with the intentions of wanting to hurt women. And even more disturbing is that some are now saying that due to the internet rumors claiming that they're trans, and given the fact that they live in Algeria, that means that they could be hurt or executed because of it. So as Christians, we need to be careful not to be the source of spreading harmful misinformation based on speculation. And so the main point is that it's easy for us to be quick to jump to conclusions that fit in with our pre-existing views and our political preferences, and we often fight to prove that we're right rather than being open to correction. And to be clear, we're gonna get things wrong sometimes, but we shouldn't persist in falsehood and go out of our way to try to justify it. Remember, the Bible teaches us that a wise man loves correction, and the one that hates correction is foolish. And as Christians, we should be more interested in the truth than trying to prove ourselves or our narratives right. Truth should be for the purpose of helping people, not a justification for being nasty towards people that we don't agree with. So don't forget that truth without love is an ineffective and annoying sound that no one can stand listening to. Just something to think about. Now, much more could be said about this, but we'll go ahead and leave it there for now. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button on your way out, as it really does help. And then go ahead and click on this video because I think that you'll like it. All right, see you guys next time.